Good evening and welcome to episode 1 of Meno Mondays. My name is Heather and I'm a menopause coach who supports women to look and feel amazing, sleep better, have more energy, and live life to their fullest. But most importantly of all, to feel like themselves again. But before I do, I just want to make it very clear and get it out of the way right now. I'm not medically trained, and everything I know is from a lived experience and a lot of research around menopause. So the reason why I became a coach is because I struggled so much with menopause, both perimenopause and postmenopause, and I honestly had no name for what I now know to be called perimenopause. I just felt so rough. I was teary. I would get into such low moods. I attended a webinar held by a GP in England, and she said that diagnosing menopause is through looking at your symptoms. She says while doctors can take blood tests, it is not always accurate because our hormones they fluctuate up and down at different times of the month in the same way when we go through our menstrual cycle. Hindsight, is a wonderful thing. I look back and in my late 30s or early 40s, my menstrual cycle started to change. It started being irregular, and then a couple of years it got heavier and longer. It was very haphazard, and eventually the doctor gave me a marina coil to help. It did work for a couple of months, but it didn't really help in the long run. But at no point did anyone explain to me that the reason why I was getting a marina coil was to tackle irregular periods, which I was getting because of perimenopause. So, fast forward a little bit more about my symptoms. I started becoming forgetful. I started bumping into stuff. As I walked through the door, I would just bang into the door, even though there's enough space for me to get through. My skin started becoming very dry and very, very itchy. And my memory started getting worse. I had aches in my joints, mostly in my hands and my legs and my lower back. Then my moods were just all over the place. I would cry and I was snappy at my kids for things that, my reaction to what they did was certainly an overkill compared to, why I was shouting at them. I had no motivation and my mood started getting lower and lower. I didn't want to do anything at all anymore. I just didn't want to go out with my friends. I had no motivation to just even get up to do the day to day things. I remember thinking, oh, I've got to make my bed. It was such a struggle. And my home just started looking messy. I just didn't have the strength in me. I didn't want to argue with the kids anymore. I just wanted to stay in my room, basically. But I remember even during this period at work, I would go to my car at lunchtime and I'd put my alarm on and sleep. But I wasn't having sleeping problems at night. I would sleep throughout, but I was just so fatigued and so tired. And I couldn't go through the day without having like this hour-long nap during lunchtime. But then, fast forward to about 3 years later, I started having problems sleeping. And for those of you who know me, I love my sleep. And, for me, 8 hours is like the barest minimum that I can get. So having problems sleeping was, oh, it was the worst thing possible that could have happened to me. So, I started like going to the doctors, telling them I'm having problems sleeping. But at no point again was perimenopause ever brought up. They just say, well, try and get a routine, the usual things doctors tell you. But really, the more stressed I became about sleeping, the less I slept. So it was only after I had gone a year without my period was when the doctors actually said to me about being post-menopausal. So that's the first time I knew I was anything to do with menopause was a year after I'd not had my period. At no point had anything been discussed about perimenopausal before that point. So I've actually put a link to my story, which is on YouTube. I'll put a link down below. So if you wanted to listen to my story a little bit more, this is just like the tip of the iceberg for what I was feeling. But it got to a point where I got so low that I knew that if I couldn't help myself, I don't know what would have happened. I'd been diagnosed with depression. I would walk into a room and my kids basically would walk out. So it really was a dark time for me. I struggled day by day. It was such a struggle. I was so fatigued. I just didn't recognize this person I was anymore. And it had to take something for me to start doing something about it. Anyway, when I did find out, I realized I couldn't take HRT, and that just put me even into more depression, just because I've got underlying health issues. So really, it was awful. But anyway, here I am today. Things have changed because I just had to get a grip with what was going on. But like I said, you can listen to my story on YouTube. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is that every woman presents menopause differently. It's complicated because our symptoms can also be quite difficult to diagnose as a result of that. And according to Dr. Vora, she's a GP and she's interested in health and menopause in the UK. And she said that different ethnic groups cope differently and present differently with menopause. And what they know regarding menopause is based on Caucasian women. And this is because the studies were done mostly on Caucasian women. So, for instance, she gave an example and said women from Asia or South Asia are likely to experience body aches, vaginal difficulties, dryness, and palpitations, while women from African Caribbean backgrounds are likely to experience joint pains and muscle weakness. But most doctors focus primarily on hot flashes and night sweats when prescribing treatment for menopause. And I know for a fact for myself, I didn't start getting hot flashes and night sweats until I was postmenopausal. I would say maybe 5 months after I was postmenopausal is when I started getting hot flashes and night sweats. So I never got that during perimenopause at all. And that could be the reason, maybe that's why menopause was never discussed when I went to see the doctors before that. I have no idea. All I know is I didn't know anything about perimenopause until I was menopausal. So, research published in 2020 said that it took 45% of women from Black and Asian backgrounds many appointments with the GP to realize that they're actually experiencing menopause, as compared to 30% of Caucasian women. And could that be, just putting it out as a question out there, is that because Black and Asian people are not going enough times to the doctor? I know for me, for an awfully long time, I couldn't say exactly what was wrong with me. I just knew that there was something because I could still function, but not at my best. So I felt I couldn't really go and waste the time when I could just say, I feel like my joints ache because they just ached. There wasn't, it didn't stop me from walking. It didn't stop me from doing anything I needed, but it was such a struggle to get myself to go. So I just wondered whether, are we going enough times to the doctors to explain what we're going through, or are we not? Is that why it takes us so long for people from Black and Asian minorities to be diagnosed? Just putting it out there, I don't know. It's a question. Also, could it be because of our cultural differences as well? Because in some cultures, they don't talk about it. It's a taboo subject to talk about menopause. And some languages don't even have a name for menopause. And I wonder whether that was maybe because of their lifestyle, um, maybe because they eat more organic food, they're more active, they have more support around them, which has been generally what I had to do to manage my symptoms. So I just wondered whether that could be the case. Also, ethnicity has something to do with your transition through menopause. It's just something I'd like you to be aware of. So, Black, Asian, and Latino women tend to start 2 years earlier than Caucasian women, and their transition through menopause lasts longer. So, yeah, I just found that quite interesting. So, that's the reason why I just thought I'd come on, jump on, and talk about Meno Mondays. And the reason why I'm doing it is because I decided that it might be a good way to just get the message out there, in a different format. Also, it's because people have been asking me questions, and I know not everybody wants to talk about themselves in a way other people can have access to what they're asking. So it really is a way of just answering people's questions. So I'm going to be doing Meno Mondays, 8 p.m. live on a Monday evening, except on bank holidays. So if you've got any questions you want addressed or any advice you think might help someone else, please send me a message. And if you know another woman who might need this, or another couple that might need this, share this video with them. And also subscribe to this channel because I'll be uploading all my Meno Monday sessions on here. So I'm going to say bye for now. I'll see you next week, same time, Monday, 8 p.m. for episode 2 of Meno Mondays.